Hey, and welcome everybody! I am Jisary, and today I will give you a glimpse into my comic creation process. More specifically, how I create the comic pages for my webcomic Katakura. Before I go into a specific page, I start with scribbling out a complete scene very loosely and simplified, following a written storyboard, which I prepare before drawing in general. I want to make sure that the pages look consistent and follow a comfortable reading flow when seeing them together. This gives me also the possibility to plan for double pages or other transitions that include more than one page. The prepared storyboard also contains all dialogue for the scene, to make sure that I plan the page with enough space for speech bubbles. When I start working on a specific page, I always kick it off with the sketching phase. I copy the scribbly page from my scene overview into a new file. Transferring the workspace from a very small size to a full-blown page opens the possibility to adjust the overall flow of the specific page better. Before, it was all about the flow of the scene, now it's about the flow of that specific page. I adjust the sizes of panels to emphasize certain moments on my page and adjust the panel flow for better readability. I also spot problems or mistakes on the page, like general perspective or proportions, and fix them. At this stage, nothing is really set in stone. I am still free to change what I want without any issue, as everything is rather simplified, so I move everything around until I'm satisfied with the result. After that step, I follow up with a detailed sketch. This stage is all about adding details like clothing, hairstyles, background, and figuring out the contrasts within the panels. This is the step that keeps me busy the longest, not only because I tend to design my characters with way too much detail, but designing the specifics of a background also eats up a lot of time. I want to prepare everything as well as I can before I go into the outlines, so I try to be as detailed as possible. The better I prepare on the stage, the more relaxing the next one becomes. But even with the goal of adding details in mind, everything is still simplified and there's a lot of room for adjustments, so I still tend to move stuff around at this point a lot. Didn't happen so much at this time though. When I'm satisfied with my page, I continue with the outlines. This step is mostly about tracing the detailed sketch and adding black shadows. I start with creating the panels. In Clip Studio Paint, you can create panels with an integrated functionality, which creates an own folder within the area you mark, containing one starting layer. This makes it easy to navigate and organize the ocean of layers that gets created over time. I follow up with tracing the detailed sketch I created, panel after panel. As stated earlier, the better I worked out the sketch, the easier and the less stressful the outlining becomes. I enjoy this step a lot, since it is very relaxing and satisfying. With a dark color and the resulting contrast, the page becomes more and more alive. It also takes often a lot of time, especially when backgrounds are involved. Sometimes I still stumble across mistakes I didn't catch before, especially when drawing after 11 in the evening, which I correct. But from here on out, changing aspects of the page get harder and harder, so I try to avoid that if I can. When I'm done with the outlines, I continue with the gray tones. I basically go from panel to panel and add grays according to the color of an area. For example, Mirai's hair that is red, so I add a tone that fits to a saturated red tone. If you are unsure about the gray tone of a color, most drawing programs have the option to change the color into gray. For example, switching the page output from color to gray. I don't use solid tones, I prefer dotted screen tones, similar to traditional manga. As an old school manga reader, I just prefer the black and white look of it and how it feels to read. I also think that black and white is more gentle to the eye, especially in digital media. I tried out coloring my comics in the past, but it just doesn't provide the same feeling for me, so I stayed with gray tones. But feel free to choose whatever feels best for you. Color brings some advantages, like being able to convey feelings more easily with corresponding colors. Normally, when I'm finished with the design of a character, I also decide on the specifics of the gray tones right away, so that I always use the same tone as a basis, same dot size, form, density, etc. Otherwise, it might happen that your main character has a different hair color in each panel. To be perfectly honest, this is the step I enjoy least. The page looks nicer after the toning step, but compared to the time this step takes, the progress the page has after that stage doesn't feel as significant as after, for example, outlining. But I also have to admit that toning is my weakest skill, so I also do a lot of things which I don't like, and adding gray tones also always means for me to figure out how to make things look better, like for example the shading of hair, both shadows and lighting. I still haven't found a way of doing that, which I really like, so every page I create looks a little different in that regard. But I still hope that someday I will find the way of toning which I can somewhat be satisfied with and stick to. What I also do at this stage is adding details with small dashes. On the one hand, I want to add more definition to materials and forms, and on the other hand, I improve the transition from different tones to one another, especially the transition from black shadows into darker gray tones. This can become a little tedious, but it adds a lot to the picture. It lets it look a bit more 3D-ish, if you so will, while also making it easier to understand the materials, especially on clothes and backgrounds. I tend to use dashes for the deep shadows and toning for the softer, more spacious shadowy areas. This makes the panel look more interesting. Where you use tones and where you use dashes for shadows, as well as the amount of details, is a matter of style and preference and might change a lot over time. I started out with a very bright and undetailed, very shonen-like style and slowly started to implement more and more detail and contrast into it because my tastes changed over the years. Don't be afraid to try out things, especially when you are not satisfied with the look of something. To find the final form of your comic style is a long road and some never arrive at the end. Last but not least, I add the speech bubbles and texts. At this point, I also sometimes need to add sound effects within the panels, for example for fighting scenes. These are always fun to figure out. In case you are wondering why I create the speech bubbles freehand, I just like the looks of it, just personal preference. And there you go, this is how I create a manga page. Nothing too fancy, but I hope I could give you some insights and inspire you for your own manga page creation. If you want to read my comic Katakura, you can do so for free on Webtoons and Tapas. The links are in the description below. If you have any questions or would like to see other art-related content, feel free to leave a comment. And if you like this video and want to see more, I would be happy if you would subscribe and leave a like, as it helps a lot. Thanks everyone for watching, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of the day. Bye!